Welcome, everyone. My name is Jen Sharon, NHA's Chief Operating Officer and your moderator for today's final session of our COVID-19 series, the COVID-19 Vaccine Update. I would like to take a moment to thank our generous sponsor of the COVID series, McKesson, an NHAA Future of Infusion Advisory Council and NHAA Gold member. We have Veronica Crawford from McKesson here with us today to say a few words. Veronica?
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Veronica Crawford, and I am a clinical support manager from the McKesson Clinical Resource Team with our McKesson Medical Surgical Division. I'm excited to be here today as a sponsor of NHIA's webinar focused on the COVID-19 vaccine update. McKesson is a leading distributor of infusion therapy supplies, devices, pharmaceuticals, and technology solutions around our asset management and patient engagement. McKesson was recently awarded the honor of being selected as the centralized distributor of future COVID-19 vaccines, as well as the ancillary administration supplies. So McKesson's expertise in sourcing, packing, and shipping those supplies across the U.S. has led to the partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services. So this collaboration will equip healthcare professionals with the medication and the necessary supplies to safely and efficiently administer the COVID-19 vaccines once they're available. We, like you, understand the importance of using our strengths to serve the healthcare needs of the communities during this crisis. So as you're providing exceptional care, then we are going to partner with you and help deliver against our vision of vaccinating in every setting, one partner and one patient at a time. So we certainly appreciate our partnership with NHIA and with you. So we're excited to sponsor, and I'm excited to hear today's speaker. So I'll just turn it back over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Veronica. We truly appreciate McKesson's support for the home infusion industry in the entire COVID-19 series. In close collaboration with Pfizer, another NHIA Future of Infusion Advisory Council member and NHIA Gold member, we are very excited to bring Dr. Kanay to our audience to give us an update on COVID-19 vaccine and processes for mass distribution. At this time, I'd like to introduce Navan Katel from Pfizer to say a few words. Navan?
Great, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, and good morning, and thank you to the NHIA for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. I'm Naveen Katyal, and I lead our hospital business for North America at Pfizer, and it's just a privilege to partner with all of you in caring for patients across the country, and especially so, really during these unprecedented times. I'm also feeling privileged today, along with my colleague, Dr. Kanay, to be able to have opportunities like this where we can connect, where we can share ideas, answer questions. I've noted that I had a chance to look at, the series here, the NHIA COVID education series, and, I have been impressed with the topics that are pretty far ranging. So pleased to have, again, the opportunity like this, which, honestly takes on even greater importance, right, in terms of idea and information exchange given the new normal. At Pfizer, we've been laser focused on how we can play a role in supporting you and your patients during this time. For the hospital business, that's really meant investment to ensure that we're in a strong position with continuous supply. We're proud that well over 90% of our injectable portfolio is fully in stock, and we are committed to really ensuring continuous supply of products that are particularly priorities for you all, right? Immunoglobulins, anti-infectives, nutrients, amongst other products and other medicines. And of course, we've also been really laser focused on ensuring that we're doing all that we can to help the hospitals across the country that have the essential medicines that they need that are in our portfolio, so that they can actually critically, care for the critically ill patients with COVID-19. And for our vaccines organization, our response, of course, has been focused on working to develop a potential COVID vaccine And I'm really pleased, again, to be able to introduce my colleague, Dr. Alejandro Cane, the Medical and Scientific Affairs Lead for North America for our vaccines team. And Dr. Cane, I will turn it over to you. And thank you again to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you. Dr. Kanai, if you don't mind, I'm just going to say a couple of words about a few housekeeping reminders. I did want to just thank again McKesson and Pfizer for the dedication to home infusion and their support in bringing education to our industry. So just a couple of housekeeping reminders. The presentation is available for download from the handout section of the navigation pane, as well as speaker bio. The webinar will be recording. A link to the recording will be emailed to you following the conclusion of the webinar and will also be available via NHIA's website within the next 24 hours. This program is not certified for continuing education. Following the presentation, we will have time to answer your questions. Please submit your questions via the question tab in the navigation pane at any time during the presentation. Okay, now on to our presentation. Joining us today to share his vast experience in global vaccines is Dr. Cane. Dr. Cane has been working on vaccines in various roles since 2006 all over the world. He is presently the Vaccine Scientific and Medical Affairs Lead in Canada and the US. Dr. Cane, I know you have a lot to cover, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just checking. So, first of all, I really want to thank you and the NHIA and of course McKesson for the opportunity to share with you where we are in terms of COVID-19 vaccine development from the Pfizer perspective, but just also to provide a high-level overview of where we are in terms of vaccine development in general. Without too much introduction, I really want to go into the presentation. So my disclosure is clear. I am a Pfizer employee. And as Jennifer mentioned, I was working with vaccines since the year 2006, busy in different opportunities and with different vaccines. But this time, as Nevin said, are completely different compared with any other vaccine that we were working on developing before. So having said that, I really want to summarize the presentation that I will deliver in the next 25 minutes. So I will take 2 minutes just to remind you what the virus is and what is the global impact that the virus has caused over the past 7-8 months. Where are the vaccines platform and why we chosen the mRNA platform to move forward with our clinical program. Where we are in terms of the clinical trials. What has the current regulatory environment that we are living in terms of requirement from the FDA perspective in order to have a safe and efficacious vaccine available in the market as soon as possible. And of course, the most important piece is once the vaccine is approved or authorized to be used, what will be the criteria that the ACIP will use to allocate, distribute, and recommend the vaccines. And I think something that is very, very important considering the pandemic times that we are living is what we are doing in terms of vaccines confidence. And if tomorrow the vaccine will be available, are you really open to get the vaccination, or would you like to wait more time to see what happened with the rest of the people? This is something that it could appear like a trivial situation, but we are facing a lot of resistance in the community today. So that is part of our objective, to not only develop the vaccine, but also create confidence in the people that at the end of the day are the ones being protected for the vaccination. So the SARS-CoV-2 is a very, very simple virus. It's a single strain RNA virus. And as you know, you can see here in the picture, it have like 4 different major structural proteins. The most important one for us from the vaccine perspective is the spike protein, which is the most important key that the virus is currently using in order to go into the human cells and produce infections. Of course, the virus has other different capsid proteins that will allow us to determine different level of infection, and we can take care of this situation during the question and answer session. So this SARS-CoV-2 is pretty familiar in terms of structure compared with the epidemic coronavirus that is the cause of the common cold, And this is the reason why some people that was exposed to this SARS-CoV-2 was not severe infected or severe affected for the virus after the infection. And as you know, there are several structures that are sharing between the SARS-CoV-2 and the SARS-CoV-1 and MERS-CoV-2 that were the virus that educate us about the epidemiology that this virus is showing with the COVID-19 situation. So as October 26, just a couple of days ago, we seen more than 40 million people confirmed with COVID-19 disease, which we know is a really important underestimation on the real situation. There are several multipliers calculated all over the world, but in the US in particular, we know that we should multiply this number between 7 and 10 times higher. So in order to have a clear idea about how many citizens have been infected by COVID-19, and dramatically, you know that between 1 to 2 to 3%, depending on the place of the world that you are living, of those cases that are confirmed are related to a very severe outcome like a death, and that is also a very important situation that we were trying to understand. At the beginning of the pandemic, we really don't know if we be able to create some herd immunity with the virus circulating in the community. And what we learned until today is that the herd immunity, due to the wild circulation of the virus, is not enough to control the pandemic. And this is the reason why we are completely convinced a vaccine could change the way that the pandemic is affecting the world today. So something that for you that are not familiar with the vaccines development, you need to know, and it's very important for all of us, is when we are discussing about vaccines, there are two criteria that are non-negotiable when you are thinking about a vaccine development plan. The first one is the safety. There is no possibility to have a vaccine in the market anywhere if you don't have the capability to demonstrate that the vaccine is safe enough. And the second piece, as you can see here, is the efficacy. There is no way to show to use in a broader way a vaccine if the vaccine is not able to demonstrate efficacy. And for that, the roadmap that this graphic that I taken from the FANG publication back in April this year is summarizing the different steps that when you are thinking on a vaccine, you need to consider. But the most important idea when we are thinking about vaccines in this pandemic situation are the capability to produce billions and billions of doses of the vaccine, but at the same time, without any less important, we have to consider the fact that the vaccine has to be safe enough and it has to demonstrate efficacy. And this is the reason why we are embarked working hard and against the clock and against the virus, trying to develop a safe and efficacious vaccine against COVID-19. So just to summarize, there are different approaches that are currently ongoing, and as you know, there are more than 170 vaccines candidates in clinical program today. So, but basically, you can summarize the different approaches in the way that this picture is showing. You have different platforms. I would like to start with the virus platform because it's the most simple to be understand, or to be easy to understand. You can have the full virus. You can inactivate the virus, or you can attenuate the virus through different processes on the lab, and with that you can have a vaccine. This is a very old technology that we have been used in the last, I should say, 100 years, and we have different examples of vaccines that are currently in the market that are using this approach, like Salk or saving OPV or IPV vaccines against polio are using this technology. And there are several candidates that are currently in phase 2, phase 3, particularly from China, that are using the virus technology. There are other different ways to try to develop a vaccine against COVID-19, but instead to have the SARS-CoV-2 viral structure, what the lab or the manufacturer are trying to do is using a virus that is not infective, but is a virus that is able to, for lab modification, you can put proteins or a piece of the genetic information from the SARS-CoV-2 into, and you can have the virus like a vector to infect the human cells and to reproduce the SARS-CoV-2 information without the disease. This is the approach that is being used by AstraZeneca or CanSino, the two different vaccines that maybe you are familiar with. That this technology have the benefit to have an strong immunological response, but the main concern that we all have regarding the viral vector vaccines is that sometimes the immunological system is being triggered by the viral vector, and you can have an strong immunological response against the vector that is blocking the immunological response against the target of the vaccination. And this is some concern that have been raised by the manufacturers. But as you know, we have vaccines in the phase 3 clinical trial that are very, very soon to be in the market. The third vaccine platform that I really want to share with you is a protein-based vaccine. Just to give you an idea, this is the platform that is currently being used for some hepatitis B vaccines and some human papillomavirus vaccines. And there are several manufacturers using this approach. And also you have the genetic platforms that you can be divided in two groups, the DNA vaccines or the RNA vaccines. And we in Pfizer decided to move forward with the RNA vaccines for several reasons that I will explain you in the next two slides. So as you know, the US government through BARDA is supporting different vaccines clinical programs in order to have enough number of doses available to protect the US citizens against COVID-19. In some cases, the government is paying the clinical development. That is the case, as an example, with Moderna. And in other cases, like the Pfizer, we are not receiving money from the government, but we have reached an agreement with them to provide the vaccine, of course, if the vaccine is finally approved from the FDA. But these are the 6 vaccines that will be available after approval in the US territory. So the reason why Pfizer decided to go with the mRNA technology is very simple from my perspective. So we were working with in a collaboration with a partner that we have in Germany, a small biotechnology company that is BioNTech, in a platform that was focused to develop a vaccine against flu. And as soon as we knew about the existence of the SARS-CoV-2 virus and the genetic information from that virus was in the public domain, we signed a letter of agreement with our partners, and we started working on the lab, developing different approaches for this vaccine. And as you will see in the next slide, we are so glad and proud for the work that we have been done in order to have in our vaccine currently in phase 3. So the combination of the expertise that BioNTech had in the mRNA technology combined with the capabilities that Pfizer have in terms of manufacturing and implementation and distribution of vaccines in a higher scale is the reason why we believe that this technology will help the world to change the course of the pandemic. So basically, the mRNA technology is a very simple way to, and I will be very clear in the explanation. We are not using the virus, so that is very important from the safety perspective. There is no risk to produce infection in the people that are receiving the vaccine. The second important thing is because we are using RNA and not DNA, there is a very, very small risk to see an insertion and mutagenesis, so no risk from the genetic perspective. At the same time, this platform has been investigating in different models in other therapeutic areas like oncology, with very important results in terms of immunogenicity. And based on the preclinical information that we obtained from the animal model, we've seen a strong immunological response from both antibodies and cellular responses. And as you probably know, when we are thinking about the prevention of a viral infection, you need to have a strong antibody response, but also a strong cellular response, because you need a combination of the immunological system to be protected against a viral infection, and this is the case that we've seen with the mRNA technology. And finally, this technology, because it's very simple to be produced, is offering us an opportunity to have a really quick production in a very high scaling up situation, like the current demand with the mRNA, sorry, with the COVID-19 vaccines. Something that is important is how the mRNA vaccines are working, right? So basically, when we have done is we have packaged an mRNA molecule in a very, very small lipid nanoparticle, which is the way that we are sure that once the vaccine is injected, the mRNA molecule is reaching the human cell. And once the mRNA molecule is on the human cell, that molecule is using the human machinery to produce proteins. But in this case, the protein that we are producing is not a human protein, it's the protein S, the small piece of information that the virus is currently using to produce infection, but because we don't have the entire virus, it's not producing infection, but it's triggering a very strong immunological response that potentially will protect against the disease. This is the mechanism of action that these molecules are using, and this is the reason why we decided to embark the vaccines in the clinical development program. So I already mentioned, once we knew about the genetic sequence of the virus back in January, we started the work. We developed different animal models. We work in mice and we work in monkeys, and we demonstrate not only that the vaccine was able to produce an strong immunological response from the antibody level, but also cellular immunological response. But in a challenge models that we developed with monkeys, we demonstrate that those monkeys were clinically protected from the disease, which is a very, very encouraging information that with the support that we received from the FDA in the US and from the EMA in Europe, we started our phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials. And as you can see here, we started in Germany back in April, and here in the US in May. So we enrolled people from 18 years old till 85 years old, and we demonstrated in those phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials that the vaccine was safe in terms of adverse events, was able to trigger an strong immunological response from antibody perspective and from cellular perspective, and we identified the right candidate to be ready to start the phase 3 clinical trial. So if you want, I can provide you more details during the question and answer session. But importantly, in July 2017, we received the approval from the FDA, and we started the phase 3 clinical trial. Originally, the trial targeted 30,000 subjects that will be part of the study, but after 2 different amendments that we discussed and we obtained approval from the FDA, we expanded the sample size of the population involved in the study from 30,000 to 4,400 subjects that are currently enrolling, and we are so glad sharing with you that our idea is to have the full enrollment in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And as you can see, and this data that I am sharing with you is updated up to last Monday, we have already enrolled 42,000 subjects across the 6 countries where the study is being conducted. We have representation in the US across 39 states with more than 120 sites in the US, and the other 30 are distributed between Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, and Germany and Turkey. We have vaccinated with 2 doses around 35,000 subjects until Monday, as I mentioned before. And this is very important because, as you may know, there were particular populations within the US that were disproportionately affected with the disease. I'm talking about the African American population, Hispanic population, Native Americans, and Asians. And this is the reason why our commitment is to enroll enough number of people from those groups that will provide you information that the vaccine is not only safe and efficacious at the global level, but also in those particular populations. And as you see, until Monday, we have 30% of our study population coming from those diverse groups. And also, that is very important to highlight is the fact that almost 45% of the population in the trial are 55 or 56 years and older, which we know are the people at higher risk to suffer severe disease or even associated with fatal outcomes. So, and finally, what is the goal for this clinical trial, right? We are testing our vaccine, and I forgot to mention a very important piece, that our vaccine is being used in 2 doses, 3 weeks apart, in a 30 micrograms dose, each dose. And the idea for this trial is to demonstrate vaccine efficacy against a COVID-19 disease, not only clinical disease, but also confirmed by PCR in people that was never exposed to the disease. That was our main objective, the primary objective, but also in people that was previously infected with COVID-19. So at the end of the trial, we will be able to show efficacy to naive or previously exposed COVID-19 population, which I think will be a very, very important to know how the vaccine is working in the real life, right? So this is where we are in terms of the clinical trial. Something that maybe you are aware, and I mentioned at the beginning, we have signed an agreement with the U.S. government to supply the vaccine to them. We have a commitment to provide 100 million doses and with an optional additional supply of 500 million doses, of course, subject to regulatory approval. We have reached similar agreement with different governments all over the world, UK, Japan, Canada, the European region, some countries in Latin America, and the idea is to provide the vaccine once we have the data available that will allow us to present the information before the FDA. Something that is very important for you to remind when we are thinking about vaccines, and I'm sure you have heard this situation before. The traditional paradigm when you are developing a vaccine is that usually you need between 7 to 15 years to have a vaccine in the market, right? And the reason why is, as you see in the top of the slide, we are familiar with the step-by-step approach in terms of developing a production. Once you have the preclinical trial information, you discuss with the regulatory authority, you start your phase 1, your first in human study, focus on safety. After you have the phase 1 and data, you can move to the phase 2, and you are starting to prepare the manufacturing scale-up production, and you are never starting the production till you know that the vaccine will be finally approved, which is also always at the end of the efficacy trial, which is a phase 3, and even a couple of months before the licensure. And that is the reason why in a step-by-step approach, you are usually requiring 7 to 15 years to develop a vaccine. Here, in the case of the pandemic, not only Pfizer, but I guess the entire globe is working in a completely different environment. We are working in a very open and transparent communication with the regulatory authority, and we particularly put in place a very aggressive and a very innovative approach in terms of vaccines development. We combine, as you see in my previous slide, the phase 1 and phase 2, and we were sharing with the regulatory authorities, particularly with the FDA, information in a real base, so in a day-by-day interaction with them. And that situation allows us to shorten dramatically the times. And as you've seen, we started the preclinical studies in February, March, and the phase 1, phase 2 started late in March and early in April in the US. So it was a very, very accelerated evaluation, but also always also considering that we need to demonstrate safety and efficacy. And the efficacy in the phase 1, phase 2 was demonstrated in terms of immunogenicity based on the antibody responses and the cellular immunological response that we've seen. And the other important aspect that I have to highlight here is very important. We are producing at risk millions and millions of doses that we practically started the production of the vaccines even before we started the phase 3 clinical trial. And that is in order to have enough number of doses available if finally the vaccine shows efficacy and safety that will allow us to obtain emergency use authorization from the FDA. So that is the reason why we are so glad to share with you now that at the end of the day we are able to distribute, if everything goes as we believe, more than around 100 million doses by the end of the year globally, and around 1.3 billion doses during 2021, which is a really amazing number. So something that I really want to highlight, because EFDA has played a very critical role in the current situation, not only establishing a very clear and strict guidelines for the entire industry in order to tell us how they are expecting to evaluate the data that we will submit. A very clear guidance that was published back in June, and a new clarification that they published at the beginning of October, with a very clear requirements in terms of safety and efficacy data that they want to have in their hands before to even consider any authorization under the emergency situation, or a BLA, which is the final approval that we are targeting by the first quarter in 2021. So this is very important, because it's completely out of any political or other discussions. So scientifically driven, the FDA is providing a very clear guidance, and those documents that I am sharing the cover page here are public available, and I provided the link on the bottom of the slide. So the other important thing is the commitment that we reach with the government is that the vaccine will be free of charge for the citizens, and how they will decide the distribution. Having Mackenzie here I am not the right person to discuss about it, but as you know, the agreement that we are currently in conversation with the government is to send the vaccine from the Pfizer manufactured facilities to the point of vaccination, and in parallel, the ancillary supplies and the kitting will be sent to Mackenzie, and Mackenzie will, in a coordination with us, will send the kitting to the point of vaccination. And again, as you can see here, there are different examples of administration sites that are different depending on the city or the state where you are living in the country. And something that is very important, because the government, the HHS, has also published a very important piece of information showing how the vaccine supply will be as soon as the vaccine will be available. And as you know, we are not expecting to have billions and billions of doses at the beginning. So as soon as the vaccine will be authorized to be used in the US, you shouldn't expect to see billions and billions of doses. So with that limitation in mind, it is very important to have a clear guidance from the government in order to know who should receive the vaccine and when and why, right? So those are the different ideas. And that is the expectation. At the beginning, there will be a limited number of doses, and as soon as the time is happening, you will see more number of doses, and of course, there will be a broader group of people that will be targeted to be vaccinated, and the distribution will be easier in terms of number of doses, and number of doses that should be allocated to be used to the different sites. So we are currently working so hard in collaboration with the Operation Warp Speed people, with the CDC, and with the ACIP, trying to facilitate and to partner them in this important and crucial supply journey that we are starting. If everything is going well at the end of the year. So, and as I mentioned before, so the idea is that, and again, coming from the same sources, the HHS published document, we have signed a contract with the government, and we are shipping the vaccine directly to the point of vaccination, and we are working in a very close collaboration with Mackenzie, and in this case, in order to be sure that we are being absolutely coordinated in terms of the kitting and the vaccine are arriving to the same place in the right manner, and that is the reason why that is not a very easy task, and we are working all day long, from very early in the morning to very late in the afternoon, and even doing over the weekends preparing the plans in collaboration with the government. So, and finally, I really want to put the focus on the, in my opinion, most important thing after the vaccine is approved, which are the principles that are are driving the prioritization, the allocation, and the recommendation. So maybe you are aware that there are different sources of information when you are looking to criteria for prioritization, allocations, and recommendations. And I am summarizing here the three main ones that I identified. Of course, the WHO from the SAGE, which is the group of experts within the WHO, and they listed different core values principles in order to make prioritization and allocation of any vaccines. And as you can read here, the human well-being and the equal respect are very important ones, but also the legitimacy and the national equity in order to be sure that the people that are receiving the vaccines are the ones that really need to be vaccinated at the beginning, particularly seeing a constraints in terms of supply. In parallel, you have the Johns Hopkins and Bloomberg School of Public Health publication, are contemporaneous to the WHO publication back in September, when they also noticed the importance to have a transparent and very fair process when you are thinking about prioritization and allocation. Equity is still a very important factor to consider, and of course, community outreach and engagement, because there is no way to use a vaccine if the people doesn't want to be vaccinated, right, or don't want to be vaccinated. And finally, the work that the National Academy of Medicine and Science, Engineering and Science has been done in collaboration with the CDC and with the ACIP, when they were looking for what should be the prioritization process that they have to put in place. And they analyzed the same principles that you see in the WHO and Johns Hopkins in a different way, and they basically create different tiers of vaccination considering those principles. At the end of the day, the body that is making the recommendation for vaccination in the US is the ACIP. And I don't know if you participated in the meetings that they have had in June, July, August, and September. And currently, we have an ACIP meeting ongoing, and tomorrow there will be a full day again dedicated to with focus on COVID-19 vaccines and current situation in the US. And they are analyzing the different principles to decide about allocation and prioritization. The main one is to maximize the benefit and minimize the harms, and this is completely aligned with the human well-being that the WHO proposed. They also refer to equity in terms of reduce disparities in terms of the population that is receiving the vaccine. Of course, they put the focus on justice and fairness, because those are the same principles that were listed in others recommendations in order to have a very transparent and clear process to decide about allocation and distribution of vaccination based on transparency and evidence. So, and I am summarizing this slide what was the last discussion that we heard back in September, considering the different risk group that should be the first target to be vaccinated as soon as one vaccine will be available. Here you see we have more than 100 million people living in the US with a high-risk medical condition, around 50 million with adults 65 and older, 20 million people which are healthcare personnel and essential workers, or another 80 million. So combining the principles that I described before, they are working hard in order to have a recommendation for any particular vaccine as soon as the vaccine will be granted with an emergency use authorization from the FDA. And the commitment from the ACIP, and I participated in several conversations with them, is to have a recommendation no later than 72 hours after the FDA granted with emergency use authorization any vaccine that is under evaluation. So just to finalize in the next 5 minutes, I really want to put the focus on the vaccine confidence, because we can make the vaccine available and we can have a vaccine which is safe and efficacious, but if the people don't want to be vaccinated, I think the vaccine doesn't make any sense. And for that, we need to remind what vaccine confidence means. And this concept refers to the trust that parents or healthcare providers have in recommending immunizations, in the providers that are administering the vaccine, and also in the process and policies that lead to vaccine development, licensure, manufacturing, and recommendation for use. So it's a very broader concept, but it's very important to take in consideration when we are communicating the potential benefits of a COVID-19 vaccine and why the people should be vaccinated. So, and just to highlight the issues, this is a picture that we obtained from the CDC report at the beginning of 2019, where they shared with us the influenza vaccination coverage in the US population, considering 18 years old people and older, and comparing the situation from the year 2008 to the end of the flu season at the end of 2018. And as you see, there was an increase in terms of vaccination coverage. However, when you split the information considering different ethnicities and groups within the country, you see that the racial disparities are there. People that are Hispanic or Black are being less vaccinated compared with the white population in the country. And without any particular consideration on that, it's very important to be clear in this point. So we need to educate and to inform the people that the vaccine that will be available for them not only is important because the vaccines will be free of charge, are important because are safe, are efficacious, will help them to go back to the normality that we had before the COVID-19 pandemic. So, and for that, and maybe you are aware, there were several polls that were conducted since May, and something that for me is still very, very important to highlight is even with all the information that is in the public domain, some sources of information are very good, very science-driven, some others are not, but independently of that, people are exposed to that information. And when you, and this is the last poll that I personally read, when you compare the willingness to get the vaccine in May 2020 with September 2020, instead to improve, that went down from 72% in May to 50% in September. And when you ask these people why they are not confident to be vaccinated, even if the vaccine would be free of charge for them and the benefits are there, the majority of them refers to the lack of transparency in terms of the vaccine's evaluation and recommendation. And that is something that we need to take in consideration when we are thinking about vaccine implementation, because again, I am repeating myself, I know that, but it's very important to communicate in a very open manner that the process that we are following are not cutting corners, are following the FDA guidelines, and the vaccines are being evaluated exactly in the same way that any other vaccines were done in the past. So, and again, there is no way to build trust in the process, when we are discussing about things developing in the case of a pandemic situation, if you are not able to share information and data with the people, right? And this is the reason why we are working in a close collaboration with, and in a very transparent manner, with different medical associations, with healthcare practitioners, with the policymakers, trying to highlight all the topics that we were discussing during my presentation. So again, there is no way to create trust and to build trust if we are not data that is demonstrating that the vaccine is safe and efficacious. And importantly, to remind, is the fact that safety is a priority. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning, is as important as efficacy, and it's not important for us as a manufacturer. It's important even after the vaccine is approved by FDA. And we are monitoring the safety of the vaccine before the vaccine is licensure, but also after the vaccine is licensure. And there are several methods that you will see in a minute that are currently ongoing and are monitoring the safety profile and just giving us enough information to reassure the idea that the vaccine that is currently being used in the country are safe and the benefits are 10 times higher than the potential risk. And here I just summarize what are the systems that are currently ongoing looking for vaccine safety information. You have different approaches. You have the basic surveillance, which is any of us calling the CDC and reporting any adverse event that we consider are related with the vaccination. This is the system that we name BARS. but also you have an active system that is having the CDC and the FDA working in collaboration and looking for any signal that could be linked to the vaccine use, referring a potential adverse event. And this is the VSD, the Vaccine Safety Data Link. And on top of those, which are the most relevant and the most important, with more than 20 years being implemented in the country, we have others, and we have more system to monitor the safety that are currently under discussion with the CDC and with the FDA that will allow us to provide enough number of information, reassuring the fact that any vaccine that will reach the market will be safe enough and, of course, will be efficacious enough to provide protection to the population. And finally, what I think is critical, and I guess this is my last slide, is that when we are facing health crises like the one that we are living today, communication, community engagement, and cultural competency are critical, and we need to adapt our message to the people that we are discussing with. We can be discussing about a very complicated topic like the mRNA technology or all the challenges that we are facing with the vaccine distribution implementation, but at the end of the day, we need to be sure that the people will be the one receiving benefit from the vaccination, and without the people engagement, the community engagement, there is nothing that we can do. So for me, it's so critical, this piece, and with that, I will pause here, and I will more than welcome to receive any questions. So again, thank you very, very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I know for me, I've learned a lot and feeling much more confident about what's coming for us. Just a couple of questions we have so far. Looking to the future, do you see the change in a more rapid vaccine development and distribution based on what the companies are learning now about and the potential success that we have with this?
That is a very, very important question. So definitely there were several changes that we have implemented internally, and the interaction we have had externally with the FDA, with WHO, and other regulatory agencies all over the world. And definitely most of those changes will arrive to stay forever. That is my personal feeling. And also there are several processes that have been implemented that will have been helping us to have a better understanding what we know and we don't know, and how we address those issues. And definitely that will help us to implement those learnings in any other future programs that we are thinking to move forward in the near future. Yes, the answer in my opinion is yes.
Great, thank you. So home infusion providers work a lot with patients who are immunocompromised. Can you speak to the vaccine's ability to develop enough antibodies in that group to protect them from the COVID virus?
Yeah, so I can give you details about the Pfizer clinical program. I have no details about others, but in general, what I can tell you is we have included in our clinical trial the most likely population compared with the real life. So we have included HIV positive patients, which are under control in terms of the disease, hepatitis B, hepatitis C patients, and even oncology patients that are not currently under treatment, but they are under control with the doctors, and that they are part of the population that we are evaluating. We have not included pregnant women in our trial, but we are planning to start studies in a second stage once we have the emergency authorization and there will be BLA submission to FDA with a particular population that we know are experimenting higher risk to suffer disease or even complicated disease compared with the rest. But in general terms, what we've seen is the immunological response for people living with comorbid conditions, diabetes, COPD, heart diseases, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, are pretty similar with the people that are not living with those conditions. So we have not particular information about high-risk populations, but those high-risk populations will be evaluated in a second step.
Great, thank you. So when you're talking about the second step and after we've started to get the vaccines out, can you talk a little bit about how the reporting might go for post-distribution? So if there's side effects or someone comes down with COVID after being vaccinated, how do they collect that information and how will that be reported?
No, this is always, again, a very, very important question. So in terms of side effect, as part of our clinical trial, we have remember, we are enrolling 48,000 subjects. Usually when we are submitting information to the regulatory authorities, to FDA, the safety database is, even in a normal situation, is around 1,000, 2,000 subjects that are part of the safety database. Here with the clinical program that I show you, we are talking about 15,000 subjects that are being part of the first submission to FDA, and we also need to submit a plan of pharmacovigilance after the approval. So we are following up 6,000 subjects, which are part of our sub population within a trial during the next 2 years, to follow them about any potential adverse event that could be linked or not with the vaccine, but we are actively following them for 2 years. But also we are implementing phase 4 studies with focus on pharmacovigilance in a collaboration with the CDC and the FDA, and also Pfizer has in place an active safety program that for any Pfizer product, if you are experimenting any potential adverse events related with the product, Pfizer is taking care of that and following up as a normal practice. So honestly, I don't see any additional risk in terms of on safety. On the contrary, what I will reassure is the fact that we are in a situation when not only Pfizer, all the manufacturers are submitting as part of this discussion with the regulatory authorities more information to be sure that the vaccine that will be used, even under the emergency use authorization scenario, more safety information than ever before. This is the very important topic that we have to remind. And the second one is, after the vaccine will be approved, we will have a very strong surveillance system in place that will allow us to capture any potential adverse events linked to the vaccination.
Great, thank you so much. One question on patients who have already had COVID and then recovered, is there going to be a recommendation for them to be part of the immunization process as well?
Again, I don't know about the recommendations because that is the ACIP task. What I can tell you is we will be able to provide information from people that already suffer the disease and people naive to the disease, and we will have safety and efficacy information in those populations that will be shared with the FDA and with the ACIP. If they will recommend or not, that I don't know, but they will have this information as soon as we get the study finalized.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned earlier in one of your slides that the number of cases is actually, I think you said 7 times what has been reported. So can you talk a little bit about how that happened or where that calculation might be coming from?
Yeah, it's an epidemiological calculation. We used to name those as a multipliers. So basically, we know that none of the people that is symptomatic is going to be tested, and even there are people that are asymptomatic and they will never be tested. And we know that the distribution of the clinical symptoms when we are talking about COVID-19 is not 100% of the people infected develop symptoms. We know that around 15 to 20% of the people are asymptomatic, and when you are analyzing the symptomatic people, 80 to 85 in some countries is like 90% of them are suffering a very mild disease, which could be like cough or headache, and that's it, nothing else. And we know that none of them are, or most of them are not going to be tested, and the other 10% that are really symptomatic, only 3 to 5% of them are having a severe disease that requires hospitalization. We know that even in states or countries where the testing is broadly available, not all the people that is infected is tested. So we have calculated, based on the epidemiological picture that's seen in different states, and there are several publications in the US showing that depending on which state you are living and calculating with the attack rate that we've seen in terms of symptomatic patients, you can estimate how many of them could be asymptomatic, and with that you can calculate the total number. This is the reason why when we are seeing the confirmed number of cases, and globally we are talking about 45 million people until today, we can easily multiply by 7 or 10 times that number in order to have an idea about how many people have been really infected. I don't know if I was clear, but I think it's very important from the epidemiological point of view in order to have a clear idea how important this pandemic has been, not only in the US, globally.
Right, and globally we know there's a lot of countries who don't have the testing capability that the US has as well, in other developed countries. So I think just one final question. What can providers do now to start preparing for the coming vaccines?
Yes, so again, what I can tell you is that people working at the CDC and at the DOH level in all the states are working so hard preparing the playbooks to be ready to implement any vaccine that will be available as soon as the vaccine will be granted with emergency authorization by the FDA. So I am personally participating in meetings with the CDC, with the Operation Warp Speed, and with the states, trying to share with them all the information that we have, in just showing them how the vaccine should be stored, how the vaccine should be administered, and in order to help them with that preparation. Of course, the guidance are coming from the CDC and from the Operation Warp Speed. We are in the same boat in terms of partnership. We really want to have the vaccine used. And when I'm saying vaccine, I'm not saying Pfizer vaccine. I'm saying all vaccines that are potentially in the market in the US should be used in the right manner. And this is the reason why we are working all together, trying to make this complicated process as simple as possible. Just trying to answer your question in a very simple manner, we should expect to have clear guidance from the Operation Warp Speed and from the CDC, because I know they are working very, very hard with the states and trying to be aligned how the vaccine should be distributed, allocated, and implemented at the point of vaccination in a very small town, in a very remote town, once the vaccine will be available.
Great, thank you so much. And I do think, you've said it a couple of times here, and we do have a lot of questions about how is it getting distributed and who gets it first. And I think the challenge for all the vaccine companies is they're really not in charge of that piece of it. That really is, you're getting your direction from the CDC and the government. So I just want to let our audience know it's not that we're ignoring those questions, it's that we just don't have those answers yet. So we can appreciate the fact that people are waiting for that information. But I think good points, Dr. Kane, about how we can prepare. So that was our last question for today. Many thanks to McKesson for their generous sponsorship and to Dr. Kane for sharing your knowledge with us. As a quick reminder, this program is not certified for CE. Following the program, you will be emailed a link to the recording for your reference, and the presentation is available for download from the handout section of the navigation pane. If you missed that time frame, you can also download that from the NHIA website. Just click Learn, CE, and COVID series and check out the rest of our series. Thank you again to Dr. Kane, to all of our providers and suppliers who are working on the front lines to keep patients safely in their home. We are truly appreciative of the work you do each and every day. Stay safe.
Thank you.